digital copy. So what they were doing is handed in as a copy of the reports of the check.
It's 5 o'clock. It's Thursday, July 27th, 2023. It's time for the Bristol County Water Authority's monthly meeting. I'd like to call it to order. And the first item on the agenda is the distribution of the annual report.
And everybody already received the e-copy? Copies for anybody. Copies all around.
Thank you.
It's getting bigger and more expensive.
Hey, no, it's getting smaller. We're trying to cut down on pages.
We're providing more public information.
No, I'm not
Yeah, we actually,
very attractive.
other than, the financials remain the same as the number of pages, but what we control is like the front end stuff regarding operations, even the organizational. I think we've cut out a good half a dozen pages, I think, from
It just feels
We're
that.
trying to keep, maybe they use the thicker paper.
Yeah.
Quality paper.
There's a nice photograph on the cover.
Can't believe this.
And nothing else, just a distribution, right?
Just a distribution, and then we have the auditors here to go over their report.
And the next item on the agenda is presentation of the FY 2023 audit. And we have representatives from Dave Sahadi and Company, Raquel Machado and Taylor Matthews.
Hello, everyone. My name is Raquel Machado. I'm here with my colleague, Taylor Matthews. I was the supervisor for the FY23 audit for the Bristol County Water Authority. I want to start off by just thanking Dan for his cooperation throughout the audit. It went very smoothly, so I do thank you. All right, so the presentation is going to include a review of the authority's audit results, some financial highlights, and discussion of accounting standards that may affect the future of the authority. So just feel free to stop or ask me any questions, or we can wait till the end. So there are two audit reports. On page 1 of the financial statements, you're going to see the independent auditor's report, and that's where we opine that the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. So we have given the authority a clean opinion, which is otherwise known as an unmodified opinion. And then our second report starts on page 66, so it's the last 2 pages of the financial statements. And here we really report on the authority's internal controls over financial reporting, as well as compliance with laws and regulations. We reported no instances of non-compliance. This fiscal year, we tested internal controls over cash receipts, fixed assets, and we did an inventory test. And we didn't see any problems with, the way that the finance department are doing things to their internal controls. So within the financial statements, you're going to see obviously our letters, which really belong to Payne and Sahadi, but the rest is your management discussion and analysis, your proprietary funds, fiduciary funds, the notes, required supplemental information, and then lastly, other supplemental information. So your management discussion and analysis starts on page 4. It's just a brief narrative and overview of the analysis of the financial statements. It is in a comparative view, so you are able to see information from FY23 and FY22. So it does give the reader just a better understanding of the changes between the 2 fiscal years. So certain financial highlights that you'll see within your MD&A, your net position increased by $4.9 million, which is about 5.6%. Operating revenues increased by 0.63% to about 16.1 million. And then your total operating expenses increased from 10.3 million to 10.9 million. Within your MD&A and within your fund statements, your proprietary fund statements, you're going to see the major changes within your operations sections and specifically your interest expense under non-operating expense. So the authority made an additional deposit of $100,000 to the OPEB trust, which increased the balance to 1.28 million. What's great with certain parts of the financial statements is you're going to be able to see changes with your OPEB and trust, your OPEB trust and your pension within the required supplementary information. So you're going to be seeing years of data that from the actuaries, so you will be able to see changes throughout the years. So that's super important for the readers to understand. Certain other things, your debt service ratio decreased to 6.87, but it's still above the required 1.25. Your authority's capital contributions increased from 84,000 to 115,000, specifically in new service contributions. And as you know, there was a bond issuance of $12 million with a 2.88% interest rate, which is unheard of at this point, right? So, really getting into now your proprietary funds, the authority acts as business-like activities provided to the public. So it's financed primarily by user charges. These accounting methods are similar to private sector companies. They offer your short-term and long-term financial information, and they have three main statements. Your statement of net position, which really acts as your balance sheet, includes your assets and your deferred outflows, and your liabilities and deferred inflows of resources. And the other side of it, which is your statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, acts as more of your P&L. Really just measures the success of the authority's operations, looks at your profitability, you're going to see your revenues, your expenditures, and then of course the statement of cash flows, which really provides information about the authority's cash receipts and cash payments. So it really answers where did the cash come from and what was it used for. So if you have the financial statements open, we are on page 12, right? For statement of net positions? Yes, page 12. And the focus on the statement of net position is really that the net position for FY23 totaled 88.1 million. Of that, total 51.6 was net investment in capital assets, which when we calculate net investment in capital assets, we're looking at your original cost of the asset, net of accumulated depreciation, and then including any capital related debt, okay? 13.8 million is restricted, so that's just being used for your capital projects that are outlined in your loan agreements. And then the unrestricted amount of 22.6 million can be used for day-to-day activities within what the board allows and of course what's necessary for the authority. So main changes in your statement of net position was depreciable capital assets increased, and you may have noticed this year that your net pension is no longer an asset, it's a liability. Okay, so the market is extremely volatile at this point, or at least it was in fiscal year 2023, December, January, February. So when you were looking at your financial statements and when you're looking at it now, you can see under your non-current liabilities, net pension obligation is $823,000, but in the previous year, it was an asset of $116,000. This may change for the next fiscal year. I mean, it's the market right now is just, there's just so much economic uncertainty. So within your statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, you had a positive net position change of 4.9 million. Your operations increased approximately 102,000. This was mainly due to a rate increase. And then certain your non-operating revenues increased due to some increase in interest income. And then focus on statement of cash flows. You know, you're seeing your changes within your purchase of property, plant, and equipment, your payments and bonds and notes payable, and like I had mentioned, it's just really giving you an understanding of where the cash is coming from and what is it being used for. So it's really good to understand, especially when you're not in the day-to-day activities. All right, and your fiduciary funds, usually used to account for resources held for the benefit of others. So all your pension and OPEB trust funds must be combined and presented in this one column that you're seeing within your fund statements. But in the back of the financial statements, it'll all be broken out. So OPEB funding is now in FY23 28.52, which was an increase from the prior year. And then pension funding did go down a bit. You were overfunded in the previous year, 102.75, yes.
So I'm comfortable with our pension funding. I'm very uncomfortable with our OPEB funding.
Okay.
How does this compare to other similar companies?
Yeah, we do get that question a lot. It is very similar, especially within municipalities. I know that you're a water department, but we do work a lot with municipalities, and we are seeing 20% funded for certain municipalities, 22%.
That doesn't give me any comfort.
There's a lot of towns and cities that have zero. in their
No, I understand that,
in their OPEB
because
funds, so-
politicians like to give something away that's gonna be
Yeah.
delivered tomorrow at great cost, and it's not gonna bite them today, but.
Luckily, we're funding more than what we're paying out currently in benefit payments, so that at least allows the trust to still be built, even though we're not actually doing the actuarial required contribution or ARC payment. Oh,
I mean, Gina, that's something we can look at when we do the budget for next year.
I think we need
If
to
the
look
board
at-
wants to be more aggressive on that, I can budget that in the number, and you can see how it flows going
Here's what
forward.
I don't understand. Some years ago, we changed from a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan, and we froze the pension fund, and those who were in it stayed in it. But for reasons that escape me, we continued to carry this after retirement benefit.
But it's the people who were hired before, I don't know the date, because it was way before I started, so nobody
So no
knew.
current people get any benefits?
Nobody who's been hired
Post-retirement?
since, I'm not sure what the date is, I know I'm not in it, Lauren's not in it, Steve's not in it. I could look up the date, but as of a certain date, no more people are in it. That's why there's an additional contribution into the deferred compensation
Right, I
for
recognize
those
that.
people, so that's the offset, so.
It was like 2018, like
Yeah.
when the trust was started.
So whoever's in OPEB then, that's what that is, just like the pension, there's nobody new in there going in there.
Right, but it's still a very substantial liability. Okay.
So after your fiduciary funds is the notes to the financial statements, and it just includes some additional summary of significant accounting policies, various balance sheet items, so your fixed assets, your debt, just goes into a little bit more detail. Your pension and OPEB details are also found in the notes, but they are also found in even more detail within the required supplementary information, from the last 10 years. I think we've already reached the 10 years at this point with information, or we're almost there. And it also goes over some subsequent events. My main focus on the notes today is just going to be quickly on page 22 with the pronouncements. The one that we were to implement this year was the statement number 96, subscription-based information technology, but the authority did not need to, there was no financial impact for this specific GASB pronouncement for this fiscal year.
was there any identified, and if so, was it up to a uncorrected misstatement?
I'm sorry.
Was there any GASB 96 SBITAs that were identified?
Yeah, so they're the QC elements in QuickBooks, but those were the softwares identified, but they were purchased, and any fee related to it is just maintenance. So it's not elevating the product or making it better. It's just a maintenance thing, which doesn't qualify under Statement 96.
Perfect.
And like I mentioned a few times already, it requires supplementary information, should be read along with your pension and OPEB notes and the notes of the financial statement. Really just a better way to understand from year to year the differences. And that is all.
I have a question. For the statement of deposition, I know that you guys do a lot of towns and cities as well as water districts. How do you think we rank on a deposition level compared to other water districts? Do you think we're in good financial
No,
standing?
you are in
good
financials.
financials.
You're a 4.9% increase in net position this year. I mean, a little bit lower than the year before, but I think the financials are extremely healthy, and I think that the authority is doing very well. You have consistent rate increases. You're not over getting into debt too much. I know you just issued a $12 million bond over the difference, but you have a lot of infrastructure that you're doing. So I think that everything looks okay. What do you think? I would agree.
Okay, and the second part to that question is, I know that we always walk a line where we want to make sure that we have enough assets to cover any, future impact of whether, another COVID-19 epidemic happens or something large that might affect us. What would be the size net position you would want us to have that would cover to make sure there's any incurring expenses? Is it like a percentage of operating expenses or like a certain number of months of operating expenses that should be covered?
When I look at, let me just give you an example with municipalities and the app. For the GFOA always, says that you should have, was it 3 months? 3 months of operating expenses within your unrestricted fund balance. So that's what I would recommend to the authority.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yep. I tell my clients the same thing.
Same
but
thing,
I just want,
yeah.
it's nice to get a different view from another accounting firm.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. Yeah, no, that's what we usually say.
And this question might be to Steve, but for note 9, the line of credit, it talks about benchmarking to LIBOR, but LIBOR is going away in the future, so I know we don't utilize our line of credit, but
I just got the documentation on that, like afterwards, probably in the last month or two, we got something on that because they're going to whatever the new
yeah, do we have
standard.
a new alternative rate that we can use, just in case we ever need to tap the line?
So we can talk about that, coming this year.
Yeah, it'll be part of, when we come up with, I'll have the paperwork, and they already sent me the information that we needed.
Okay.
I think I had Steve sign something to send over them to say,
Perfect.
like you haven't, okay, it's fine, I got any choice, but.
All right.
Well, if there is any other further questions, please feel free to reach out. We're always here to answer any questions, even if you think about it and you want to read the financial statements by the pool or on the beach or something. So
Thank you very much.
thank you.
I know how much work it takes to put these together, so we appreciate all of your effort as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, before you know it, you'll see us again.
I know, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public input. I don't see any members of the public here tonight, so we'll move on. The next item is item 5, approval of the minutes from the June 29th meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay. Unanimous approval of the minutes. Now we turn to our executive director for a report on the activities for the month.
Okay, so So the pipeline project, phase one, we just need to plant some trees up at the Ken Heights, which will probably take place in the fall at this point. Beta continues to advance the design, particularly along the new alignment now that they have the boring information on Fifth Avenue. Still waiting on the blending and water quality report from the Beta sub-consultant, and we've already had conversations with the Department of Health to give them a heads up that will be coming soon for them to review. We're having our technical consultant part just review some of the technical components of the Pawtucket agreement, and once that's done, we do intend to have that also legally reviewed. And I've talked to Joe how we're going to go about doing that. Joe needs to recuse himself from this document, but it's not a very complex agreement really, but I guess to be safe, we'll have an independent legal review on this. Demolition of the plant, pretty much done. Mike and his report has a good before and after shot. Right now they're just laying some stone down where the tank structures used to be. We're kind of bedding out as kind of a cold storage area that consists of either combination of containers and or an overhang structure, which we will then move a lot of the materials that are currently inside the plant building to that structure there.
Steve, could you clarify what cold storage means?
Storage containers.
But I mean, keep it physically cold, or this is stuff not in
It's outside. Yeah.
But
It's outside but in a container.
But where's the
Not in a heated structure.
That's what, you're not chilling it, it's just sitting outside.
It's a storage area.
But it's inside a container, so it's not exposed to the weather.
Right. And in the
Unregulated
demolition of
test.
the plant, there was no need for fill that could be served by some of the soil that's being removed from the dam. Because I noticed one of the reasons for the increase in cost was.
Yeah, unfortunately, that material that's getting taken from the dam is not going to be suitable for the fill. For that.
It won't be suitable?
No.
What's
Which is
not?
one of the reasons for the cost, increase. It's too silty. There's no really structure to it.
Once you have to have CRMC approve it as well,
Yeah.
that'd be pretty hard.
Yeah. So one of the, I mean, again, a little far afield, but as you can see, management of the sediment and sediment disposal is a big component of that contract cost for the dam. And the low
And the town
bidder,
of Warren doesn't have any need for it.
the low bidder did secure a landfill site. He was able to bring his costs significantly down from his initial bid. No, town of Warren has no need for it though. So for the dam removal project, we completed all of the sampling that was required for CRMC. We gave the lab results back to the homeowners. 12 homes out of 27 participated. There's nothing that really stood out with respect to those samples. And just, as you know, the bids were accepted on the 22nd. We can talk more for that next item when it comes up.
Steve,
Yes.
do we have any responsibility to the other 15 homeowners that didn't participate?
I don't believe we do.
Perfect.
Meters down to 15. Joe's not here, but he may have gotten a few more done over the past couple of weeks. And I think we're close to getting a solution with respect to some of the folks who are claiming health issues. So that would knock off some additional ones. But mainly now, what he's up against is more just scheduling on getting some of these done because the sun wants. We're getting there, getting close. Provided the water purchase graphs. June's a tough month, as we all know. Took a long time before summer to get here, but we seem to be into the summer season now. And I have the capital improvement project summary charts. So all those projects, budget-wise, seem to be good shape. Mike is not here this evening. Just some of the highlights in his. This is before and after the plant demo. On the Hope Street pump station, there was some activity over the past month. They did quite a bit of the site work, got the drainage in. However, we're still waiting on some of the internal components to arrive to wrap up that work inside the building. And we are receiving some bid submittals for the administration, not bid submittals, but material submittals for the building roof, and we're getting a schedule for them to start work probably late summer, early fall.
A question on, going back to water quality. I understand that this monitoring of water quality is done for health department requirements. I was curious, because I know it comes up every once in a while, but I don't know what we do about it. If a customer calls in and they have a water quality problem, their water tastes unusual or there's an odor to it, and I don't know how often that might come up. What is the process there? What do we do anything for the customer? Do we do some testing or?
They'll go out, they'll take a look, and they'll take a sample if they feel it, I think it's warranted, sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sue, if you want to give an update on the distribution system work that's been going on?
Walsh is progressing without incident. They're on Radford Street in Bristol. Our project, as well as the gas company, was held, the town asked us to wait till after 4th of July to start the work. So both contractors are on the road, installing mains. We're cleaning, lining our main actually there, but the work is going well. Pretty congested area. The bypass system had to be connected to quite a lot of homes with multi-unit apartments in them, but everything goes pretty well. Welsh is actually, we have good experience with them as far as customer relations. They're good dealing with people and getting their houses hooked up. So everything's working fine. There will be a one-time nighttime shutdown. They have to shut down the main to do some work in one of the intersections. It will require shutting down many apartments in the senior housing, the food pantry, all the way to brick pizza. So we're scheduling that with all the customers. It will be we're requiring it to be during the night, first of all. So most of the customers will not have an issue. And we're dealing with the restaurant, coordinating their schedule. And that will happen in a couple of weeks. And then they'll, finish up that site and be out of there, and they have a little bit more work in Barrington. So.
Is work being done on both ends of Central Street? North and
Yes, so
south?
that's where we have an access pit on one end near Linden Place, and we have another one at Radford Street, and they're lining.
Okay, but Central Street also goes north of Bradford?
So we are not doing anything on Central Street North. The gas company, I believe, is though.
Okay, because somebody in that area was talking to me, and I didn't think we were doing anything, and they said, yeah.
No, we did the south portion of the street, the gas company did not,
Right.
and they did,
One suggestion I would make is that we have some signs that would be portable that say something like, this is another improvement being made by the Bristol County Water Authority, that we move from place to place so people know it's the water authority and they know that the system's being improved.
Right.
Some generic language, so you just reuse them.
Yeah, the town actually has a sign on Hope Street that, noting that it's part of the work they were doing on Hope Street was part of the infrastructure, the
so
town's
those,
infrastructure.
those projects, that's a requirement of borrowing those federal funds. they require you to put up a sign.
Yeah,
It's specific
no, that's a
wording.
good point. I think that's good, kind of
But
good PR.
we could
lets
make
people know.
something
Yeah,
similar.
The signs I'm talking about aren't federal signs. They're just a plain sign that's talking about the town's infrastructure plan.
So maybe the town of
It's just
Bristol.
north of Ciapas, I think. It was a sole sign, it's the only one I've seen anywhere in town. I don't know if it's
Yeah, we
still
could,
there.
that's, you know,
In your table, right under, in the distribution system improvement contract, you have in parentheses, after contingency, Burnside, what does that mean?
so we added a change order to this project because we found out the town was paving Burnside and we got in there and did our water main. But that's to note that I didn't ask for more money to be added to that budget because we had the money in the contingency. So in the end, that contingency will get used as the contractor finishes up the contract. That it will look like money's coming out of the contingency, but it's the work we did on Burnside.
Is there any more federal infrastructure money that we could tap for improvements that we are thinking of making in the future?
if we want to take out a loan through the infrastructure bank.
I meant, if they're putting up 50% of the cost, and we're gonna have to do it anyway 2 years from now.
They're not.
They're not?
They're not giving us like
Okay.
free money.
No
If they
fee.
were, we would be. We'd be ready.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
You also have something in your report about lead service line replacement. Are those projects, were those projects anticipated in the capital plan?
We did have some money in capital, because we were already working to remove lead from our system. The federal guidelines have changed recently to change how many we have to remove, but we were already working to do
So
that.
now this is for the service lines going to people's homes and businesses.
Right.
Now, when you find that the line is a lead-based line, is it typical that the customer also has lead going into their house?
So we have no lead service lines in our system. We have lead connectors connecting the
It says service line records. You're updating service line records. That's
So
why I thought.
Our service line records note that we have some of these connectors that were lead, just the connector piece to the service line. We have no records of any lead service lines. Our records of the customer side are not complete, but we assume that there are no customer side lead service lines either.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Unfortunately, the federal government has different definitions for things, but yes, we do not have any lead service pipe to our knowledge.
Yeah, Sue's group's been diligently going through all the old records, from the old books to research all of this, because we're required to, well, it's good information to have, but we're also required to under the EPA regs. Also, the state of Rhode Island just recently instituted new lead service line replacement laws. And per the state law, if you even just had a lead gooseneck that led into a galvanized line, not a lead service line, that line is considered a lead service line, the entire line. And they're requiring the utility to replace from the main all the way to the home.
If it was galvanized?
Yes.
I have a question for you later then. Okay.
Yeah. So we're working on that inventory. I think even before that's even finalized, we can show the board what we're, where we are with that and where we plan on going. When I first started here, that was one of the first things I asked, like, how many lead service lines do we have? And, initially they said, not even lead service lines, goosenecks that, and they said about 70. However, with the new law, that number may increase. So that's what we're trying to flush out at the moment. Because I would like to just get a contract out next year and just clean it all up, and so that we can just say we're lead free.
Okay, financial report.
All right. We're up to June, so we're a third of the way through the year. We're in the meaty part of the season, the summertime, although I was listening to the weather the other day, and last July was like one of the driest on record, and as of like through the 17th of July this year, this July is like the second wettest on record, so I'm not anticipating July, August, and September to be spectacular just because it's been raining. Nobody's having to fill their pools or water their lawn. So for June, when we look at June versus last June, we have a slight decrease in the revenue. That was largely due to, like I said, a lot of rain, so there's been decreased consumption this June versus last June, and that was offset a little bit by the rate increase. The expenses are also lower. A lot of that, again, like usually when we look at month versus month, it's a lot of timing issues. We had the two biggest ones. They usually highlight maybe 3 or 4 of the bigger items. 2 larger decreases were operation maintenance expense and other expenses. And those were just due to, again, timing. We had less maintenance work in June of this year versus last year. And last year, in the maintenance other expense, we paid the Department of Health licensure that we have to pay every year. And this year we didn't end up getting the bill or paying it until July. So we'll see that when we get to July. There was a decrease in salaries and wages. This perplexed me a little bit until I asked Dave and Mike about it. Operations is down, was 14,000. This was actually an increase in the wages, and I was confused by it because I'm like, we haven't added anybody. We had a couple people out last year. We had one person who was out on some sort of leave that started like maybe in March or April. And then we had a gentleman who left employment and we didn't fill that position until August. So again, I was really curious as to why it increased when we didn't add any bodies. It's because we had a couple people out last year. Again, one was a non-work related injury and the other gentleman left. So we'll probably see that again when we get into July a little bit, and then should even off by the end of the year. For the 3 months ended June, revenue increased about 14% versus the prior year. Again, that's still, we're going to see this pretty much through the year, just because those shifting, those rates late, those 9 routes late last year kind of slid a little revenue around, so that should level off going forward. And when we start looking at this next year and the years after. Expenses were slightly higher, just under 2%. Again, most of it's timing. The biggest piece was administrative expenses is over about $109,000, and that was due to, we had increased the pension monthly amount that we put into the pension for this fiscal year, so it's higher than it was in the prior year. Again, the salaries and wages increased because of those two employees and those positions filled this year. And there was a little bit of a decrease in the purchase of water, about $39,000 versus the 4 months last year. And we'll see that when you look at the consumption. Consumption's down. It looks higher for March because of the shifting of those rates, but April, May, June, you'll see they're all pretty much lower than they were last year.
Dan,
Yep.
I see that interest income is now outpacing bond interest expense, so I want to say congratulate you.
Well,
guys for
you keep congratulate the Fed. Thank
moving
you,
the
Fed.
money around, make sure that we're getting good return on cash that's sitting there.
We don't have any
Yes.
control with that. That's U.S. Bank, and they have to invest it in whatever is acceptable for all the compliance needs. So it's not
Okay.
invested in anything spectacular, but I think I mentioned this, like in April, you're starting to see a big jump when you look at month versus month. And we got lucky with that 2.88. We got in there just in the nick of time. So it's very nice to see that extra interest income coming in. When we get the actual versus budget, which is on page 5, revenue's over budget, which is good. That's a good over budget. Again, the actual usage so far this year is a little bit higher than we budgeted. Expenses are under budget, just over 6%. Again, that's good. 2 larger areas under budget are just, I think we've had this, legal fees and consulting fees a little bit lower than budget. I know some things have been held up, due to some, even the dams a little bit pushed back, so there's just been less, consulting costs, and we haven't had, thankfully, much need for legal, expertise this year. Operations and maintenance, again, is a little bit lower due to timing. That was that DOH fee that I mentioned last year that hit the books last June. We didn't get it until July this year. I'm going to spread that out over the year going forward so that it doesn't hit one month and look weird. I'm going to add that to a schedule that I do, that I space it out over the year. When we get to pages 6 through 8, which is the dollars billed and the gallons delivered, that's the big part. Both the dollars billed and gallons delivered are up. Dollars billed is up 14.4%, and gallons delivered is up 8.74%. Again, they appear higher than normal due to the shifting of the routes late last year. And that pushed some of the higher volume months into March of this year. So when you look at April through June's consumption, it's actually a lot lower than it was for the same months in 2022. And considering that so far, July 17th, well, I can't believe I remember that date, as of July 17th, we're at the wettest, second wettest July on record. I'm not anticipating increased consumption for July or August. That'll affect us through pretty much October, early November. Page 9 is the trust fund report. Through that, our debt service ratio through June is 6.55. It's a little bit lower than May. I think we had a bond payment in June that when we make some of these payments, it impacts that a little bit too. I think we have one TD Bank bond that gets paid. So that fluctuates a little bit. The pension summary report, we just have the pension because the OPEB I just get every 3 months. This is as of June, and obviously this is the end of the plan year. So for the month, as well as for the pension year, the balance is up. It was up 181,000 for June, and up for the year 400,000, which is good considering how it was down for a few months there. As of June 30th, the balance is up to 3.69 million. And sent some information over to the pension folks recently, the census and stuff like that, so they're working on the numbers, and I believe they come out in September to report on the pension fund and how over or under funded we are, and that leads to me changing whatever we put in going forward into the pension, and it will impact next year's budget.
Any other questions of Dan? Next item on the agenda is board member town council reports. Anybody have anything they want to report to the board? No. We'll go to the dam removal project. Contract
We
award.
want a motion to approve the amended order,
To approve the report.
the $145,901. The park operation.
Oh, well, we're doing the dam removal contract first.
Oh, sorry.
Just want a quick summary on that. We received the 2 bids initially, one higher than our grant budgeted funds and one very high. And we met with, state law does allow us to meet with bidders and to discuss their approach with them, and for them to then revise and resubmit their bids. Value engineering approach, we did get our revised bids. The low bidder came down in his price of $500,000. And that mainly had to do with the sediment disposal. The real high guy came down to $3 million. So after review by Park Corp and by staff, we are recommending a contract award to Luciano Excavation for his revised bid of $3,881,620. I note that it's still higher than the grant funding that we currently have of 2.4 million. However, this company said they can get out there and get this job significantly completed this construction season. If we decided if we had gone out to bid again, this would only delay the project, and the project wouldn't have restarted until next year. And we'd be like even seeing higher costs.
I certainly would like to see the project go forward, but if we assume for the moment that there's no additional grant funding for this project, how do we accommodate the additional costs?
We have been building up the cash a little bit, more with the foresight of phase 2, but we could tap into that. It might impact what we do for capital budgets and rate increases going forward, but we can definitely tap into that and use those funds. We got to pay with our cash anyways, and these are reimbursement type grants anyways. We can absorb that additional cost.
We can absorb $1.4 million, $1.5 million.
Yes.
And if you recall back in 2019 when DOT was going to do Schoolhouse Road, the board had committed, and this is before we even received any grant funding, up to 1.6 million for the upper dam work.
I think we should go forward because I think it's only going to get more expensive. I think what it argues for is a higher rate increase.
Yeah, I don't disagree. As I preface my remarks by saying I want to see the project go forward, I want to make sure we had a good answer, and Dan, I think, provided a good answer.
We can absorb it, and again, we can look at it when we do the budgeting in terms of how much of an impact that will have on, if the stuff in the capital budget doesn't pare down a little bit, or if we have to have a little bit higher rate increase to accommodate for it, but there's room in there.
We also don't want to lose the 2.4 million in grant funding as well, so it just costs us more in that long run if we lost that.
And Steve and I did go through a lot of work to try to get approved for some researching about additional grants.
Yeah, we continue. I mean, we just recently submitted for $600,000 to another program, and this is a smaller pool of money that's really for its climate resilient funds, and it's a $2.5 million pool that EPA set aside for this area alone. They're only looking for 4 or 5 projects. So we hope that they see that this project kind of fits right in there, and it's shovel ready. I mean, if federal government's looking to get dispose of these, use these funds up, this project is ready to go. We also just recently met with the grant administrators from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. We had a very good meeting with them, and they're currently looking into their kind of pools. I mean, they're eager to see this project happen as well. And they were, they seem like they may be able to increase that grant, which is currently 1.4 million from them. And we made the same request to DEM. I've been kind of going back and forth actually with Terry Gray, the DEM director, and he's looking into their pool of funds as well.
The only hesitation I have with going forward is, sorry.
Oh, George had his hand up, so I'm sorry.
Steve, I'm curious, how did the bidders account for the reduction in their bids?
I think with respect to Luke John's excavation, it had to do with the tenement disposal, because he found an alternative site to bring the material that really decreased his costs.
Some of the numbers are pretty substantial.
Yes.
I'm throwing out the idea, I mean, would it make sense on other bids to go back to people and see if they can sharpen their pencils?
The issue with that is timing. It delays the project by a considerable amount. And we go out to bid, and there's no guarantees we're not going to get the same bids
I guess
back.
my question is, I mean, can we be certain on all the bids we get that we're getting the best bids?
You never know that.
We gave them the opportunity to come back. Like I said, the low bid dropped $500,000, which is not insignificant. I mean, I don't know how many times you can go back to them and say, can you go even further? I don't, you know.
No, I was thinking of all the other bids we get. I mean, would it make sense on some of the other bids we get to go back to people and ask if they can?
We got these 2 bids, so this
I
is
think he's
required.
talking, I think he's talking general operations.
Other projects, other projects.
Other projects?
Would it make sense to go back to people and see if we can get?
What made this particularly different was the fact that it was, the 2 bids came in substantially higher than the engineer's estimate.
It's just
And
that,
also what we had in the budget for grant funds. So that compelled us to go back and say, hey, what can you do on this?
so I
One of
guess-
the companies came down considerably, like by $3 million. And if you do a comparison on a line-by-line basis, it's really interesting what the higher bid had and what the lower bid had. It was night and day. And Steve and I had talked about that. The higher bidder apparently doesn't have a lot of experience or any experience in this area. So that's sort of reflected in their higher bid, I think.
So my question, to see, when we go out and get bids, in most cases, do we sort of understand where the bids should be? Is that, I guess that would be my question, to make sure that we're getting the best bids.
Understand where the bids, the range of what the pricing should be?
Yeah,
Is the
Well, the initial engineer's estimate was put together a few years ago. They were around 2,628, I believe. They thought it'd be around 3,335 with some increases from that.
But George might be asking, is the engineer's estimate a public information before a project goes out to bid?
We did not give them that information. And we did not give them our available monies either.
So I think we should move forward, and frankly, we were prepared to move forward on this before you were successful in getting the funding. So all the more reason I think we should move forward. My only hesitation is if the 2 additional grant sources you're talking to know that we've approved this, will they back away from potential?
I've told them that. I specifically told the Fish and Wildlife people that. I said, we're moving folks, we only meet once a month. And given the time of year restrictions, the contractor needs to get out there next month to start. Because he can only work in the water from July to December.
Right.
We've already lost a month, it's the end of July already.
I move to approve it in the amount of the estimate.
Second, is there any other discussion on this? Any other questions? No? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. The ayes have it.
The second one, you want the task order amendment to par for $145,901.
Correct.
Move to approve it.
Second.
The next item on the agenda is a task order approval for PAR Corporation to perform the construction inspection and contract administration for this
I think you
project.
just approved it.
Motion in a second, yeah.
with a motion,
But that hasn't been voted on.
with a motion.
We just haven't voted on it yet.
I
She
know.
made the motion.
I'm having trouble hearing today. I'm having an ear problem today, so I'm just... I actually had said to Lauren that if I asked a question that's already been answered, to kick me, so... But anyway.
But it's good, it's always good to clarify.
But anyway, okay. All those in favor say aye.
I don't think you got a second, am I right?
I thought something came from Chris, right? Yes, there was a second from Chris. I did hear that.
Yes.
Okay,
So
so
here's the right answer.
we'll do it again. All those in favor of the motion on the floor to approve this contract amendment with Power Corporation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. There's no opposition. It's unanimous. Next item on the agenda is executive session regarding litigation with North Farm versus BCWA persons who Rhode Island General Laws, Section 425A2. Could I have a motion to go into executive
So
session?
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition.
So we adjourn, no further business, right?
Are we on? We're on. The next scheduled meeting,
Motion to seal.
Seal minutes.
need a motion to seal the
So moved.
Second.
executive session minutes. Have a second, a motion and a second, all in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Not hearing none, it's a unanimous vote. Okay, now we move on. Next scheduled meeting is August 24th. No changes to that, Steve?
No.
Nope. Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Everybody in favor?
Aye.
So adjourned.